couple of years ago, I had this assignment from the seminary where I had to conduct 3 interviews. One was with a young priest, the other was with a middle-aged priest, and third with a senior priest. And the point of the assignment was to get a glimpse into what their experiences of seminary life and priesthood were like, so I can reflect on what I'm experiencing myself. And I must say, my favorite interview was with the senior priest. And that's because I knew him from my childhood. He would come to my home parish on occasion and celebrate Mass. And especially when I was in my teenage years and I was really starting to fall in love with my faith and starting to appreciate Jesus' presence in the Eucharist and the beauty of the Mass, I noticed that the way he celebrated Mass, there was just something different about it. He just celebrated with love and passion. And the way he spoke to people and looked people in the eye, there was just something different about him. And especially as I was beginning to consider becoming a priest myself, I looked at him and thought to myself, that's the kind of priest I want to be someday. So when I called him up to interview him, he had me come on over, and I was there to complete the assignment, but I also wanted to find out what is different about this guy. What's his story? Well, I hardly even had to conduct the interview at all, because when I came up to the front door, his greeting just blew me away. He opened the door, he read the shirt that I happened to be wearing that day, and very enthusiastically he said, "Heart, soul, strength, yeah." Just reading off my shirt, he was so excited to see the words of the first and greatest commandment that we hear about today, both in Deuteronomy and in the Gospel. And through my interview with him, I realized those words really do motivate and define his life. That I was inspired by him because I know that he's been loving the Lord with his whole heart, his whole soul, his whole strength for all his ministry and priesthood. And that's something that was very different about him. So this commandment that we hear first from Deuteronomy, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is Lord alone. Therefore you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength." It's a pivotal moment in the Scriptures. And it even goes back to Moses' encounter with God at the burning bush, when God reveals to Moses something extremely profound. Moses asks, "What is your name, that I might tell them who you are?" And God says to Moses, "I am who am." The Hebrew rendering of that name, it's a very sacred name, Yahweh. I am who am. And there's plenty of ways to translate it, and there's lots of thought and amazement that goes into this name, that God would give us his name. Because imagine you know someone, but they never tell you their name. It's kind of hard to call them, "Hey, you, do this," or "I'm trying to tell you something." But when you call someone by name, they turn to you, they pay attention to you, they look you in the eye. So when God revealed himself to us, it's because he loved us first, that he wanted to reveal himself to us and say, "Call on my name, and I will hear you, I will turn to you." You're not just calling to something you don't know in the sky, but you know me by name. And it's by that name that the Israelites were saved from slavery, from Egypt. But here's the thing. God revealed himself out of love, and he saves us, and he saved the Israelites. But even that wasn't enough for them. After they leave Egypt and are in the desert, they complain to God, say, "We don't like the desert. It's hot out here, it's dry, we don't have enough food. We wish we were back in slavery." And then again, God gives them the 10 Commandments, a way to live, to be in relationship with God, revolutionary, a way that upholds human dignity and all that's good. And instead, while Moses is receiving the commandments, they build a molten calf, and they worship an idol, as the one true God is revealing himself to them. And so God has to give them this commandment. The Lord our God is Lord alone. And that name Lord is that word Yahweh, the one who is, I am who am. Not just any name for God, but the most important name, one that we don't use lightly. The Lord our God is Lord alone. Therefore we shall love him with our whole heart, our whole soul, our whole strength. But the Israelites fall again and again. And that's the whole story of the Old Testament. You see idolatry over and over again. It's infuriating. How do they not get it? Enter Jesus, the one who takes on flesh, to be one of us, to live with us, and to reiterate this commandment once again, because he loves us with his whole heart, his whole soul, his whole strength. And he came to call to us, not as a tyrant, but as a lover, to say, love me with your whole heart, your whole soul, your whole strength. That's the gospel today, the most important commandment, what Jesus came to teach us. And he didn't just say it, but he did it on the cross too. Loved us with his whole heart, his whole soul, his whole strength. And he calls us to do the same. But do we really love God with our whole heart, our whole soul, our whole strength? Or is it just most? Or maybe half? It's a daunting task. But to truly love God is something that motivates our every thought, our every action. It's a mantra that we have to repeat to ourselves all the time. Simple things that we do, like doing the dishes or doing chores around the house. Do we do it for the love of God? Because that's what gives it the deeper purpose. When we're doing our work, do we do it for love of God? Or when things get tough, do we turn to God in prayer? Or do we just turn to those things that can numb us? Sometimes we give our screens a lot more time than we give to the Lord in prayer. But it's when we turn to the Lord in prayer that we truly experience that love that he's poured out for us. So as we begin to examine how we're truly loving the Lord, how we've really organized our lives, now is a perfect time to recommit. Now is a perfect time to repent of those idols that we worship, those things that we put in place of God because we fail to trust in him with our whole hearts, our whole souls, and our whole strength. In fact, what we've just celebrated is such a precious and sacred moment. Jesus Christ has given us his body and blood in the Eucharist. He dwells within you at this very moment. He dwells within each person in these pews around you. So speak to him, pray to him, ask him to help you love him with your whole heart, your whole soul, and your whole strength, because he chose you first. He chose to give himself to you in love. So let that love define your every action, your every thought. Repeat that commandment to yourself all the time, because it's when we're starting to live in that love of God that we start to become saints, that we start to feel truly alive and animated with the mission of the gospel, to love our neighbor, to love our families, to change the culture, to be a light in a dark place. So love the Lord your God with your heart, with your soul, your strength. Yeah.